There are 15 levers that make up somebody's cost priority profile, or was it 16? I don't remember, but we'll go through each one of them. But basically, most people have the saying that you got to pick two of the three: speed, price, and quality. Basically meaning that a contractor or any vendor that you may hire will have two of those three things. They'll give you a low price, they'll give you high quality, or they'll be fast. And you can only pick two of those things. You can't have all three. And not that I disagree with that by any means. What I'm saying is that there's actually way more than three of those things. There are 15 or 16 of them, and we're going to go through the list. I'm going to go even deeper, though, than just those three topical issues. You see, what I think is that there are 15 different things that really matter to a contractor. And also there are 15 things that really matter to you as a customer. And what I'm trying to do is figure out, let me rewind. I think that the biggest problem in construction and finding the right contractors and the whole feud between contractors and clients is that expectations and priorities are misaligned, and that everybody tends to group the other party into one classification where there are lots of different profiles. These 15 items are different things that might matter to a contractor and might matter to a customer. And it's important for you as the customer, the investor, to understand what those 15 things are, understand which ones are important to the contractor, understand which ones are important to you, and then figure out how to align them and find the right contractor that matches those things. And then you can build a relationship, and then you can start getting what you want out of these rehabs and flips that you're buying. When you don't get on the same page, ultimately your costs will end up going up, whether it's your actual costs or just the cost of your brain space and your bandwidth, and really your ability to be able to take your foot off the gas for a little bit and let your business sail without you. So these are the factors that affect how a contractor might count the cost of doing business with you. And the first thing that we need to do is, I very specifically said cost there, not price. So I need to go through the differences between cost and price, because really to us as investors, the most important thing to you is going to be, well, not the most important thing maybe, but one of the top factors for you is going to be the price that you pay for that renovation, because you're trying to get the best deal you can to take a property to the finish line and maximize your profit. Of course, there are other factors that matter to you that we'll get into, but one of the biggest ones is certainly the price that you pay. So how is price derived? Price is derived from a few different things, talking about the price that the contractor gives you to complete work. So it is derived from the costs. Now there are a few different types of costs. There are real costs, which are direct costs and indirect costs. And then there are the perceived costs, which is really where we're spending our time in this podcast discussing how you can lower the perceived cost, which will ultimately affect the price that they give you. So what are real direct costs? Real direct costs are the costs that are associated with the project that you've hired the contractor to do. Things like how much they had to pay their guys for the labor to do the work, how much they had to pay subcontractors that they hired, how much they had to spend on material, how much they had to spend on gas that's directly related to your project, tool rentals, machine rentals, supplies, nails, screws, paint. These are the items that if they were a cost plus contractor, these are the costs that they would be marking up to bill to you. Those are the real direct costs. Now you have your real indirect costs. These are the things that the contractor will probably find on their profit and loss statement. And you might not be thinking about those things as the customer, but they're certainly thinking about those things. And they may be like really thinking about those things, or just they know that it affects them. It's definitely affecting their decision making. These are things like, do they pay rent, their cost for their vehicles, the office staff that they have, the software that they have, the office supplies, the insurance. These are things that they can't attribute to your project specifically, but the way they interact with you and your project definitely affects these things, whether they draw a direct line to it or not. For instance, what they need to do is what we call keep the surgeons at the table, meaning them and their people should be working, producing on a job site somewhere, because them producing ultimately is what makes them money. So the more things that take away from those surgeons being at the table, ultimately the less profitable that construction company becomes. So when you have a project that is very complicated and requires a lot of steps outside of actual production, a lot of brainstorming on how to problem solve, a lot of administrative work, a lot of dealing with the city back and forth, a lot of change orders, a lot of customer problems. These things ultimately keep the surgeons away from the table. They keep the contractor from being able to have production hours that they can actually bill for. And once again, it might not be that the contractor draws a direct line to these things. It also doesn't necessarily mean they bill you for an hourly rate. You might be thinking, well, they don't bill me hourly, so this doesn't matter. So let's just talk about that for a second. A contractor who gives you a bid, which is the preferred method for us to work as well. Like when we go out and hire a contractor, we want them to give us a bid. We don't want an hourly rate. So you might be thinking, well, these indirect costs don't affect you at all because they're doing a bid. But over time, it absolutely does. And so when I say the hourly rate, and even when I talk about, mandates to do work, I think that everything basically breaks down to that. It might not be the way that you're physically paying, for instance, with the bid. I pay for a bid, but if you really break it down, that bid was derived from what the contractor believes he's going to have to pay for his hourly rate for people and for himself and for material. That's where the bid came from. So it does come down to that. The really smart and savvy contractors are going to draw a direct line to that. Others are not. But what the others who are not drawing the direct line are going to do is they're going to understand that when they're on your projects, they don't make as much money ultimately. They might not find it day one. They might find it after a year of doing business with you. And you might be thinking that, well, then I'll just find another one once their prices start going up. And that's fine, but that is a really hard way to do business. I used to do business that way myself, but the better method is to find somebody that you can really hitch your wagon to and work with for the next 10 years. And that's where you can really start letting your foot off the gas and focusing on other things. And so real indirect costs, that's what we were just talking about. Now let's go into the perceived costs. So we had real costs that were direct, we had real costs that were indirect, and now we have perceived cost. The easiest way to explain a perceived cost is the cost for the contractor's soul, is the way that I would put it. This is, are they doing the type of work that they like to do? Are they working with the type of people that they like to work with? People that they respect, people that respect them back? Are they proud of the work that they're doing? These are the things that play into perceived costs, which is where we're going to focus a lot of our time today. Now, let's get into the 15 or 16, somewhere around there, number of things that make up the cost priority profile. These are the things that affect how a contractor measures the cost, therefore gives you a price for doing the work that you're asking them to do. Number one is the obvious one, actual price, profit for the contractor. Of course, some, maybe most contractors are all about the cheddar and they don't care about anything else. They just want to get the most money they possibly can out of a job, and that's what they're here to do, and that's what they're going to do. And that's fine. You know, you need to understand that. And also on the flip side, maybe you as the customer, that's all you care about, and you'll sacrifice all of the other 14 cost priority profile items, the factors, to get the best price possible. And that's fine too. Definitely been there. I will say that we've talked a lot about initial price being different than your overall price. Things come back to bite you later, so you do need to watch out for that. And then on the flip side, just so you know about hiring, if you're thinking, well, I'll hire somebody for a little bit of a higher price to get some better quality or whatnot. And I would say that a lot of times their price isn't higher just because they care more about that factor. It's because they don't know how to manage an effective, efficient business, and you're just paying for a lot of overhead. That doesn't mean they're actually better at anything. So weigh all your options here. Okay, moving on to factor number 2, independence. For some contractors, the most important thing is to be able to just go to a job site and work, to be on their own, to not have somebody breathing down their neck. They just want to take on a project and go build something that they can be proud of. And that is the most important thing to them. And they'll sacrifice other things for that reason. Those are seriously some of the best guys that you work with, ones that like truly take pride in their work. Flip side or downside of that is usually that means that they want to do nicer work than you're used to, but that is one of the other factors here. And so if you get the right priority profile mix, you won't have to worry about that. So that does lead me into factor number 3, craftsmanship/creativity. The most important factor to some people is to have a portfolio of the pictures of the nice work that they've done, or not even have that portfolio, just to do nice work and do creative things that they're proud of doing. And truly, that's awesome. You know, show me more of that for sure. Downside is that a lot of times they're doing more work than you would want to do. So for them to be able to fully do the creative things that they want to do, it requires more of your money because it takes them more time and it takes more material, and that's a tough thing there. What you really want is somebody that's proud of what we call quality, which is consistency. Like they're focused on the systems of knocking out those floors with that same paint, with those same cabinets consistently, and that's what gives them pride in their work. But that is a rare thing. We've talked about that before in the best contractor video or blog out there. But craftsmanship, creativity, maybe that's the thing that's most important to the contractor. Maybe it's the thing that's most important to you. It definitely would be if it was your personal house, but that's not the way that we approach these investments. Fluid schedules. That is number 4 now. Being able to give a contractor a project that doesn't have an intense and aggressive timeline. Now, this can be a great way to get a better price, but it does have costs potentially to you depending on your program. So basically, think about it from a contractor's perspective. One of the biggest things to the contractor is that they're always having to think about their next job. They got to make sure that they can feed themselves, their family, their crews. And so they always have to be thinking about their next project. They always have to have one eye on that while they're focused on the project that they're actually doing, which we've talked about this a lot. That's usually what leads to the contractor's black hole, is they have to be thinking about their next project, and they think about that while they're working on yours, but then they line up the next project and they really got to get that one started. And, that's really where the money's at. So now your project isn't as appealing anymore. And so there's things that you can do to give them what we call job confidence, to where they believe that you can bring them their next work as well. And that is one way to do it. But another thing to do is to give them fluid schedules, give them a project that doesn't have a hard timeline, and then you can keep pushing along that project. But then that gives them a base, a solid foundation that they can start to build a lot of confidence on. And so for you guys that know our local strategy, a lot of times I have projects going on that are not they're not priorities to me. A house I bought off market that was cheap or whatever, and I really couldn't care less when they get done. And, I'll give those to contractors while they're working on other projects of ours that do have tighter timelines. These are usually customer jobs because I don't have tight timelines on a lot of my projects. But with if there's money raised for the project, or if it's with a partner, then I need to do it quicker. Those are in our view of our business, customer jobs. I'm talking about projects that might be less important, but we give those to contractors, and now they can always have somewhere to send guys. They always have work to do, and they can feel a lot more confident, a lot less pressure on themselves about having the next place to go. And then you usually get better work, and definitely you can get a better price when you don't have pressing timelines. And even better yet, if you explain to them why you're giving them a fluid schedule on that one. Next factor, receiving trust. This is just a really tough industry for both contractors and customers. There is just a lot of feuding, a lot of mistrust, a lot of turbulence between those two parties, and we talk a lot about settling those things out. But I'll tell you that if you can make the contractor more comfortable, like genuinely, it goes a long way to actually trust them and build a relationship and not question everything and micromanage. It goes a long way. Once again, this is about all the factors that matter to contractors and customers, and that one does matter, and that will affect the other factors. Project types, the next factor. Is it a new build, A-class, high-end renovation? Is it a crappy rental, an investor grade rental? Is it a whole tail type of project where you're just doing a small punch list? Is it a tenant turnover? Do you need permits? Is it a complex project that's going to require problem solving at every corner? You see, different contractors like different types of projects. And there are certain types of projects that basically nobody likes. Like take a crappy rental rehab that's in a bad area. Well, most people don't necessarily like doing that project, but they might like those types of projects because they know that also comes with some of the other factors like independence, like trust from their customer, repeating business from their customer. Next factor, shared project. There's not very many contractors who like working on a project where multiple other contractors are coming through there. It just always causes issues. There are some who like it. It's usually people who work alone, and they like it because there are people there to talk to. However, I guess I do understand why contractors don't like the other person on their project. It's because usually they're getting blamed for something. There's whatever left on the job site, the other contractor would blame them. I guess that would come up. It is like kind of wild that people complain about these things, but or not that they complain about these things, that these things happen is a funny thing. That's all there is to say about that. Things that do happen, though, is tools do tend to walk away. One contractor comes in with their crew, another contractor comes in with their crew, and all of a sudden, somebody's got a problem with their tools or walking away off the job site, and everybody's playing the blame game, and you'll be dealing with that. So this is usually something that I try to avoid as well. Next factor, payment confidence. Does the contractor know that this customer is going to pay quickly, pay in full, and are there going to be any problems there? I guess this also plays into if the expectations are clear. Obviously, you can't pay unless the expectations you set have been fulfilled. And so are you setting clear expectations, therefore you can pay quickly when they're done with the work? This is obviously a factor. I think this is probably one of the biggest factors for contractors. I believe that paying in full and quickly are some of the most important things to contractors. I think anything other than that is like a punch in the face. And so we always try to pay like within 24 or 48 hours of a job being done, which of course requires us to inspect a job very quickly. Now, I am not saying to pay when work isn't done correctly. And, we have had to hold money off of crappy contractors who try to skim and all that kind of stuff. And like what you do is it's not a screw them over situation. It is a be fair situation. And the fair thing to do at this point is to take whatever they bid for you. Let's say they bid $5,000 for a project, and then you have to go send in another contractor to do the work that they left undone and then deduct that amount. I think it's fair if you want to add some for your time and having to deal with that. I don't think you need to do that. We don't do that, but it definitely would be reasonable. That's what you're thinking about here, is having the reputation of being fair about those things. Now, it is easy in that situation because that contractor is forever going to think you're unfair about the thing, to just abandon it completely. But I don't think that that's the way that you should deal with it. You should hire somebody to do the work. You should deduct that from the original bid price, and then just don't call that contractor again after you've paid them. Next one, future work. Really, this is job confidence. I know we hit on that earlier, but for a contractor to know that you have the next project lined up for them as well, or maybe another one right now that they can work between one or the other. We talked about, the fluid schedules and such. This goes such a long way, knowing what it's like to be a contractor out there trying to find the work. It's great to know that you're lined up there, because when you don't have to focus on those things, when you know that your business is taken care of, then you can focus on being great at delivering quality, delivering speed or price or whatever it may be that you as the customer want. And so if you can line that up, it's a great situation. Next factor, time wasting. Time disrespect is what I should say. This one is huge for sure. That just a lot of these guys get their time wasted, and I've heard people talk from both perspectives, that that, it's a subcontractor. It's their job to go give bids. That's their marketing, and that they should, that is part of their business, and they should be out there doing it. Just like a real estate agent has to, do CMAs, and, that's part of their marketing, or an insurance agent goes and does quotes and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not even getting into that debate right now. I mean, I definitely have my beliefs on all that. But what I'm saying is, what we're here talking about is, what are the factors that weigh into how costs are weighed from a contractor's perspective. And if you're having people run around and do bids and you're not hiring them for the job, it is definitely adding to the perceived costs of working with you. And so take that for what it is. Use it to strategize or don't. But I can tell you that I certainly never go have 3 contractors bid every job. I have one go bid. I focus on building a relationship with them. I focus on being aligned with what that job entails, and get the price that works best for the project, and also hopefully for the contractor, because I picked the right contractor to work on that project, knowing the cost priority profile and who would fit best for that specific job. But anyway, time wasting, time disrespect. Next is freebies. This is like classic. And, I like freebies just as much as the next guy. But, man, there are just people out there that are always working that angle. And that just weighs on contractors. And you're going to pay for it in one way or another. And just know that if they actually give you the freebies, you're just paying for it somewhere else and you don't know it. Because you can only go so far. And, sorry, the freebie is like, always trying to get just a little bit extra, or, can I pay for materials? Can I, since you're there, can you do this extra thing, or whatever it may be. Now, I'm not saying things that have been pre-agreed upon, pushing to get those things done. That's not a freebie. That is what was expected. But yeah, the freebies, it's just, you pay for it one way or another. Yeah, what I was going to say here is that, you can only push things so far. The contractor has the actual costs to do the thing, their real costs, the money they have to pay to get a project done. And then they have what you pay them, and then they have their profit in between there, right? And if you bring down what you pay them, or bring up their costs, make them do freebies, and eat up that profit, they eventually go out of business, or they start cutting corners, whatever they need to do. They either figure out a way to keep that area by doing something that you wouldn't like if you knew it was happening, or it gets closed up and eventually they have to close the doors. And so none of that is good for you in the long term. Do you have ADD, or do you have a focused scope of work? If you are the type of investor who is changing your mind all the time, and, like I can envision the type right now, you walk into the place and you change your scope. Instead I want to do this with the kitchen. I have this vision now, and, well, you might think that's cool. And you might also think, well, I'm going to pay for it anyway. Like I'll get a bid from the contractor, and like I'll pay them fairly for it. And I do think that's reasonable. Like that is a very rational way to look at it, that I'm adding work, but I'm paying the contractor for it. And I think that a contractor should probably look at it that way. However, it is not always the way it's looked at. A lot of times, the contractor gets the original scope and they just want to get that done and call a project complete, and then move on to the next one, and are actually frustrated by the unfocused scope of work. And so just consider that. There is also, on the opposite end of the spectrum, there are contractors who give you a initial scope of work where truly it's like a it's a loss leader and they don't make a lot of money on the initial bid because they know that you're going to change your scope of work throughout the project, and that's where they'll make all their money, by marking those up really high. And then just advice as an investor, pick your horse from the start and don't change midstream. Make a scope of work and stick to it. Obviously, there's change orders if things come up during the project, but don't flip-flop from one thing to another. Just make your plan and go with it. License, insurance, permits, the admin stuff. This is a factor. There are people who work out of their basement and don't have any of this stuff, and those are definitely the cheapest guys, but they have no ability to pull permits and so on and so forth. Some guys have all the stuff, and you probably pay for that. And I'm no Boy Scout, so I'm not saying what you should and shouldn't do. There's certain things that my insurance requires me to do, but I'm not giving you my opinion on that. I am just saying that is a factor that weighs heavily on how much you actually pay for the project. Who are you? Are you a type of person that is likable? That obviously plays a big role in how much people want to do your project, therefore how much they'll charge you to do the project. But the only advice I could give here is to be genuine. So I think about this often. When I talk to a contractor, I can get into the details about the type of work that they're doing, the actual job, the detail of the work, because I play the part as an investor who was a contractor and who knows that kind of stuff. And that plays fine. But when our operations manager goes to a job site to talk to these guys, he will straight up tell them, I don't know anything about construction, but I am very good at keeping details about what you want, and I will get an answer for you, and then he carries that out. But he's very likable, much more likable than me. But what makes somebody likable is being genuine. That's what I'm saying here. He brings that story to a job site because that's who he is. I bring my story to the job site because that's who I am, and that's what you should do. So don't be a guy who doesn't actually know about construction and try to act like you do, because people will sense that. Have your story and make sure it matches you and deliver that. Next factor, the perfectionist. I seriously have seen investors, definitely have seen clients who, like back in my work for people who live in their house type of days, where, you get a flashlight out and you're shining it down the wall to see if there's any imperfections in the drywall or hardwood floors, and looking for every imperfection. For one, I'll just tell you, back in the day, I would do work for the Hyatt hotels, and they had, I think that basically the drywall had to be like 70% okay or 80%. I don't remember what the number was, but the point is that a lot of imperfection was accepted. And just to be clear, worked for a contractor who worked for Hyatt hotels. Like, our company got contracted by a contractor that was contracted by Hyatt hotels. They didn't tell me the 80% thing. But anyway, the point is that the 100% perfect is not a thing. Look in your own house. You'll find imperfection everywhere. But when a contractor works with a person who they perceive that it's going to be that way, or have proof that they are that way, you would need to price yourself accordingly. The next final thing here, I guess this is probably 16. I think there were 15. This is a bonus one, is language. And, most people get what I'm saying here, but there is a communication barrier to working with certain contractors. And that can inhibit them from growing their business. But also, if you take the time to work through that, it could open you up to some of the best contractors you'll work with. And, I'm not talking just about folks who don't speak the English language. I'm talking about maybe people who don't speak the English language all that well. Those just because you can't communicate with somebody well does not mean that they are not good at what they do, and that doesn't mean that they don't fit all of the other factors that matter to you as an investor. And it is extra work, certainly, but it is work that's also very worth it. So how do you apply all this? Well, it's not Match.com here. You're not going to get the perfect match of a lifetime. But what you need to think about for yourself is which of these factors are important to you. Obviously, price is going to be a big one. And then you start to work to find contractors that fit the profile that matches with you well. And, that, like, I've talked about this in other content, but I've talked about the profile of the contractors that we go after. And I guess I'm talking about this. But if I want to have a profile of because my profile is to get a better price, to deal with contractors who want to be independent. I want to set them off on a project and not have to talk to them until they want a paycheck. That's ideal for me because it preserves bandwidth. I want people who, they care about their craftsmanship, but their craftsmanship means consistent products. I don't, at least on my personal projects, care about speed all that much. I care about an agreed upon timeline, but speed is different than that. But anyway, like we could go through each one of those things, but mainly what I'm saying is I know what I want as an investor. Therefore, the types of contractors I'm going after are not the guy that has the truck that's wrapped and, the whatever your like classic plumbing companies in town where, if you hire them, you're going to pay your kids' college tuition fund to get them to clean out your toilet or whatever. That's not the type of contractor I'm going after. I'm going after the guys in that have their crew in a white truck and or a white van, and they have the magnetic company sticker on the side of their truck, and they get out of the vehicle with paint and drywall all over them. Those are the guys that I'm looking for, because I know that in most cases, 9 times out of 10, they are going to fit my cost priority profile. So that's what you do. It takes time to understand exactly what yours is and what you're looking for, but it's not really that deep of a mystery. And I get more into this in the best contractor video that's out there on YouTube, and I'll check it out, and I'll talk to you soon.